I was muted. Hello, everyone. Happy Wellness Wednesday and happy Financial Literacy Month. I hope that everyone is doing great this evening and you have been having a wonderful day. If you are new here and you haven't met me before, I am Mia James, your financial wellness coach and financial concierge. And I like to match people up with different financial resources and also make financial literacy very simple. And so tonight's topic is all about the wealth formula. And I won't be long before you tonight, but I did want to share a quiz that I found, a financial literacy quiz. And I like quizzes. I don't know about y'all, but when I was growing up, I would get the magazines and I would take all of those different quizzes that they offered. So I'm going to share that with you here on the screen. And if you do take the personal finance quiz, I would love to know what your thoughts are. So I'll leave that up for a little bit while we jump in. So if you're new here, this is a very open dialogue. So definitely feel free to use the comment section and leave comments, ask questions. Totally happy to respond to all of that. All right, so let's jump in. So first and foremost, we are going to, hey Jen, always great to have you here, sis. Awesome. Thank you for being here tonight. And I'll also drop the link in the chat as well if you would like to take the personal finance quiz. There you go. All right, so let's jump in with the wealth formula. So I am going to prayerfully share my screen because with technology, you know, you got to hope it works because I like to have visuals. I know we're all different type of learners, right? Some of us are visual learners, auditory learners. I am definitely a big visual learner, so it's actually easier for me to share with you. And if you're just joining us, let me know who is here tonight, where you're joining us from. And when you think about the wealth formula, what comes up for you? And I want to break this down very simply because many of us have not learned personal finance either at home or in school. And I want to make sure that we have access to this information so that we can live the lives that we truly want to live. So let's jump in with the wealth formula. Okay, so let's see if this is going to open and share properly. Yes, it did it. Okay, wonderful. All right. So the wealth formula. So first, it starts with money, right? So money, think about money as your capital. Okay, so one thing I like to level set on is actually what is income. Okay, so when we think about money, so many people think that whatever their paycheck is, or the money that they earn from their business, that is their income. Actually, it is not. That is your revenue. So your income is any money that you have left over after your expenses. And so when you think of money, this is the amount of money that you have to be able to do whatever you need to do with, whether it's invest, you might use it to have some fun and travel, things of that nature. You also need time, right? And I'm going to explain to you why time is important in terms of building your wealth. Some of you already know this. I know that my weekly listeners, y'all are very savvy. And so if you want to add anything in the chat too to let our newer listeners know, definitely feel free to do so. So you got your money that you're investing, right? Saving plus time plus or minus the rate of return, right? So depending on where your money is, if you have a positive rate of return, your money will grow. If you have a negative rate of return, you may lose some money, right? And there's these things called, realized and unrealized gains and losses. That's a whole different concept, but important for you to understand, because just because, like, if you're in the market now, right, and you start to see red, if you don't sell, then you don't have to necessarily incur that loss, right, Jen? Yes. Okay. Then you also need to think about inflation. And so this is important because a lot of times we have our money in savings accounts that do not keep up with inflation. So if inflation is at 3%, but your savings account is only paying you 0.01% interest, then that means that you're actually losing money because it's like not even keeping up with the value of money because of inflation. Hopefully that makes sense. I want to make this as simple as possible, right? So you need to make sure any rate of return is at least equal to or greater than inflation. So your money is not losing its value. If the money is at home under the mattress, and yes, we should all have some funds at home under the mattress. But if your majority of your money is at home under the mattress, is not keeping up with inflation. And then you also have to think about taxes, right? And I love talking about taxes. I am not a tax expert, but I am a tax fanatic because there's three different types of tax buckets. So I hope some of you are taking notes and I hope this is interesting to you and you learn this really simple concept. So it's three tax buckets, okay? The first tax bucket is tax deferred. Okay? Most of us are very familiar with that tax deferred bucket. What falls under the tax deferred bucket? Anybody know? Let me know in the chat. Anybody know what's tax deferred bucket? Okay, so I will tell you. Under the tax deferred bucket is your things like your 401k, right? So anything where you're taxed on it later, like once you withdraw the funds, that's tax deferred. Then there's the middle tax bucket, which is capital gains taxes. So this is taxes on things like real estate and investments if you do have a gain. So let's say you sell some stocks or whatever have you, or sell real estate. Now there are ways to do things like 1031 exchanges. If you sell real estate and you buy another piece of real estate, you can defer the taxes in that way. But eventually, Uncle Sam likes to get his money. So, of course, but there are legal ways to minimize your taxes, right? Again, I'm not a tax expert. Happy to connect anyone with a tax expert because I do have my own personal tax strategist because I want to make sure that I'm doing things properly. And then after your capital gains taxes, then you have your tax advantage type of investments, right? That could be cash value life insurance. It could be a Roth IRA, as well as municipal bonds. Okay. So when you're thinking about building wealth, especially if you want to use your wealth not only now but later on in life, once you have your work optional lifestyle, then you want to think about having a tax advantage portfolio as well. Okay, so that's very, very important to consider all of this when you are thinking about wealth. All right, so that is that one. I'm going to share another screen. Hopefully, again, that works. Okay, so let's see here. Let's see. Yay. So I hope this is big enough for y'all to see it, but just in case, because this is even a little small on my end, let me see if I can make it bigger. Okay. So what this is talking about is in terms of building wealth, you want to start as soon as possible. And I am a big proponent, Jen and I, we both listen to Dr. Boyce Watkins every morning. He comes on at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. He's amazing. He talks about economic consciousness every single day, right? And so one thing you want to do is start. So let me just break this down because it looks like it's a little bit small, but I want to make sure y'all get the concept because, like I said, I'm very big on visuals because it's easier for you to understand when you have numbers in front of you. So let's just say that this individual started at 25, right? So let's just say after grad school. So I know I finished grad school around 24 years old. And let's say you got your first stable job. This person started early at 25, right? They saved $3,600 a year for 7 years in an 8% tax deferred account. So remember, who remembers what a tax deferred account is? Can anybody give me an example of a tax deferred account in the chat? I want to make sure we got this. Anybody remember what a tax deferred account is? Can you give me an example? All right, I'm going to tell you just in case you can't type. So this could be in a 401k, for example, okay, or traditional IRA. So this person put in $3,600 a year all the way until age 31. And then they stopped, right? They were like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy my life now. Maybe they had a family, they bought a house, who knows? And they contributed 25,200 in general, but then they just let it grow, right? And this is the beauty of compound interest, which I'll show you in a minute. But essentially, yes, Jen. So a 403B is tax deferred too. Very good. Yes, that's absolutely a tax deferred account. So this person at age 48, they just let it grow at 8% return. By the time they were 48, they had $128,361. Now, let's just say you waited until you were 32. And you were like, I got all my stuff under control. Now I'm ready to start preparing for retirement. So they started saving $3,600 per year for 17 years, same 8% tax deferred, but they started 7 years later. So by the time they were 48, they only had they had more, $131,221, but they contributed more to be able to get that amount. So they have about $3,000 more, but look how much more they had to contribute. So if you don't remember anything today, remember that you want to start and you want to get some help to get started so that try to avoid as many, like throw something at a wall and figure it out. You want to be educated when you make these decisions, and not just set it and forget it. So let's talk about this compounded interest. Like, why did this happen? And this is all very basics. Like when people come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, man, I'm so anxious about money. I'm like, look, can you multiply, divide, add, and subtract? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, so you could do money. It's that simple. I mean, of course, it's deeper than that, but ultimately, the numbers, you don't have to do calculus to do your money. So let's look at the next slide. Okay, so I'm almost done, y'all. I just want you to have these real basics down pat when it comes to wealth. Because if we just get this foundation down and then we begin to build and educate ourselves and learn and study, we can do this. And so you might be saying, if you're saying like, oh my gosh, I need more money, that could be true, right? Maybe you have more month and money. But let's say you do have a good steady flow of revenue coming in, either from your job or your business. Sometimes you just need to make small changes. The first one is to pay yourself first. How many of you in here, because I know it's a couple people here tonight, let me know, put a 1 in the chat if you are paying yourself first. So either from your business or your paycheck, you are putting some money aside for yourself to either save or invest. Let me know if you're doing that. So basically, let's just say you started saving $10 a day, and let's not even make it $10 a day. That might seem scary because that's $300 a month. What if it's just $5 a day at $150 a month, right? Give or take. So here are some key things, that you can essentially cut down on, right? And now I'm not telling you to give up everything, right? Because you work, and so you want to enjoy life, but you want to consider your future self. Will your future self be thanking yourself of today for making these minor adjustments? So, yes, Jen, thank you. Pay yourself first. Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. So, if you look at it like this, in this particular example, with this person doing $300 a month at 8%, in 30 years, give or take, right? This is assuming a consistent 8%. So, this is example sake. That's not necessarily how certain investments work. They would yield in 30 years about $447,107. Now let's say that they doubled that. You're talking about almost close to $1 million just for being disciplined and being consistent with putting in this amount of money. And we can spend $300 a month on eating out, y'all. Like, let's be clear, right? It's easy to spend $300 a month. I mean, if you car notes are triple that nowadays. I mean, when I hear people's car notes, I'm like, what? I haven't had a car note in like, I don't know, 5 years. So I don't even, when I hear about them, I'm like, oh my gosh, who can afford a car? Maybe it's those daily trips to Starbucks, whatever it is. Maybe you just do half of them so that you can be able to consistently put money aside so that you will thank your future self or your present self in the future. All right, so let's look at the next slide. We are almost done here, y'all. I just like to, oh, clicking the wrong button. Excellent. Thank you, Jen, for your participation. And if you are here and you've never joined the chat, if you're on Facebook, it should say, or YouTube, it should say live chat, and you should be able to put in any comments that you have and ask any questions. This is always an interactive session. Let me see what this one is. Okay. So remember the slide before last, I showed you how, by the time they were 48, how much money they had. And so this is basically the rule of 72, and this is how compounding interest works. So remember, all of us here, we have a savings account, and in that savings account, we get interest credited. So just for easy numbers, let's just say, you had $100 in a bank account, 10% interest. That's not what's going to happen. Okay. But just go easy numbers. So let's say that you're credited $10. So now you have 100 plus the $10 interest. That is equal to $110. But now you get interest on the $110, not just $100 anymore. And then it keeps growing and compounding. So that's compound interest put in a simple manner. But there's this thing called the rule of 72. And what that means is based on whatever rate of return you have, interest rate, right? If you divide that number by 72, that will equal the number of years it will take for your money to double. So let's just say, for example, if you have a 4% rate of return, which is very common nowadays for high yield savings accounts, then if you left your money in that high yield savings account, it would take 18 years for your money to double. If you had an 8% rate of return, like we showed in the last example, it'd be 9 years for your money to double. And then if you had 12% rate of return, because the S&P 500, I think is somewhere between 10 and 12% year over year on average. Obviously that is not the case in, recession times or 2008, things of that nature. Let's say you had a 12% return, then it would only be 6 years for your money to double. So what this is showing here is that $10,000 at a 4% rate of return versus a 12% rate of return. See here at 65, this person at a 4% rate of return had 40 grand, but over here at 12% rate of return, they had $640,000. So remember, rate of return is super important when you are thinking about your money going to make more friends. That's what I like to say. I like my money to go make friends and have money. So any questions so far, feel free to put them in the chat. I am happy to answer them for you. All right. So we are about at our last couple of slides here. Okay. So I just want to go back to the piece on taxes, right? Because earlier I talked about the 3 different tax buckets. And this is not necessarily a sexy topic to talk about, y'all, but we need to know this because I don't know about you, but I have a lot of goals and dreams, and my goals and dreams take money. Let me know in the chat, how many of you got goals and dreams that take money? Anybody else besides me? So I have to know how to make my money work for me so that I can make these things become a reality. I don't want to look back when I'm like 85, like, man, I wish, no, like I have to take the bull by the horn and go and figure it out. Right. And so we figured it out together here. So this is really important for us to understand how inflation impacts our purchasing power. Because earlier I talked about, if your interest rates are not outpacing inflation, then you are basically you are losing purchasing power on your dollars. So let's just look at example 1. I hope y'all can see it. Okay. It looks kind of small on my end, but essentially, let's just say you save $1,000 at a 3% interest. That's $30 that'll be credited to you. And let's just say you pay taxes of $750 if your tax rate was 25%. Because remember, that interest is considered income. So you still have to pay taxes on it. Then so after the taxes are paid out, now you have 1,022.50. But let's say inflation is at 3.5%. Now remember, in this particular instance, the interest is only 3%. But inflation is at 3.5. So you subtract $35. So now your actual return is $987.50. All right. But let's look over here. Same scenario, but this time it's 5% interest, right? We pay the 25% taxes. Most of us, probably are in somewhere probably around 22. Well, depending on how much money you make, 22% is standard of what I see. But again, it depends on your income. Now, after taxes, that's 1,037.50. Inflation is at 3.5, which is 35. So they had a return of actually $2.50. Not much of a return, but they at least had a return. So depending on where inflation is at any given time, you want to be checking your interest rates to make sure that your investments or your savings account are actually outpacing inflation. So I hope that makes sense. If anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So we're going to go to our last slide for tonight. And again, if you are just joining us and you want to take the personal finance quiz, I'm going to pop it for you in the chat. And I will also show the banner so that you can, if you want to take a picture of it, this is a free personal finance quiz to see where your financial literacy is if you're curious about that. All right, so let's wrap up for tonight because I know some of us are going to a book club because, we just like to learn and we like to expand our economic consciousness. All right, so tonight what I want to do is leave you with this. These are the foundational steps for a solid financial foundation. So when you think about building a house, you want to build it from the ground up. So first and foremost, you want to make sure you have proper protection, and that's life insurance protection, disability protection. Why do you need disability? Disability protects against if you cannot work and your family is depending on your income, right? So that's really important. Life insurance, we're all going to pass away, but what if we pass away prematurely and we have spouses and children that are counting on us for, to live, right? And so how do we make sure that if anything happens to us, our family is protected? Also, you want to manage your debt or eliminate it, honestly, because, debt that is not making you money. Because sometimes it's okay to take on debt if it's going to be profitable or someone else is paying the debt for you. Then you want to make sure you're also, I was just simultaneously building an emergency fund, because if you don't have an emergency fund and you have an emergency, a lot of times people tend to go further into debt because they're swiping because they need to get this emergency handled if they don't have any emergency fund. So that's important. And then you want to consider investing, right? Because you never want to invest money that you cannot afford to lose or set aside for an extended amount of time. That's really important because if you need the money, you may not be able to maximize the investment. So I know that was a lot, so I'm going to end here, but I hope that this was helpful for anyone that is watching. You may already have many of these things in place. But if you don't, then if you need some support, you can actually go to my website, which is beyondthebusyness.com. And in the upper right-hand corner, there's a link to book a complimentary discovery call. Additionally, you can also get my book, which is Think, Learn, and Feel Rich. It's on pre-order right now. And in my book, I do 10 mini lessons on different financial topics. And it also comes with a complimentary workbook where you can actually document all your assets, because it's so important that our families actually know what we own, what we have, so that when we do pass away, people are not scrambling, right? It's already a sensitive time. People are already grieving. And so if we can make it simple for our families and have our legacy organized, I do have a tool in there for that, as well as debt management tools. There's savings tools. There's so many different things in there. Life insurance calculators, all sorts of things inside of that fillable PDF that you get complimentary for pre-ordering your book. And so you can find all of that at beyondthebusyness.com. And again, I am here. I offer complimentary financial self-care calls. And so I just want to make sure that you are well. And I know that, Mental Health Awareness Month is coming up next month. Everything is connected, y'all, right? Mindset, heart, money, emotional wellness, physical wellness, everything is connected, whether we see it or not. And so I really want to make sure that you take the time to slow down, connect with yourself, and get beyond the busyness so that you can do the things that are important to you. And it may just be putting your financial house in order so that your legacy is organized, so that your legacy is strong, so that your family is well taken care of when you're no longer here to take care of them. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you, Jen. Love you too. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. I think that is the last week of the month. Maybe not. Maybe it's 2 more in Financial Literacy Month. But if there's anything that you all want me to talk about, drop it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, please, because we need to get the word out, y'all, because everything is going crazy in this economy right now, but we do not have to be victims. We can be victors, but we just have to be educated. So thank you for watching. Again, I hope that this was helpful for you. If you need any personal support, you can go here to beyondthebusyness.com, and I am happy to support you. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful night. Good night.